أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وأفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، خالق السماوات والأرضين، حمدا كثيرا نحمده ونشكره ونستهديه ونستغفره ونستعيذ به من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فهو المهتدي، ومن يضلل الله فلا هادي له. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وأعز المرسلين، وعلى وصيه وحبيبه أمير المؤمنين، وعلى الصديقة الطاهرة الشهيدة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، وعلى سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، وعلى أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي صاحب العصر والزمان، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائما. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات، المسلمين والمسلمات، الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات. Brothers and sisters, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us what's best in this dunya and the highest of statuses in the day of judgment. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I advise myself and advise you to be pious and to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to seek His satisfaction and to avoid His anger and punishment. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to do that. Innahu sami'un mujib. On this blessed day, the day of Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, Friday, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to be of His servants. We ask our Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman to accept us as His servants, especially on this particular Friday, for a certain reason. This Friday is the first Friday in the season of sorrow, in the season of Fatimiyah, which starts after the martyrdom of Rasulullah. And the sorrow of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra salawatullahi wa salamu alayha starts. This particular Friday is the first Friday of the season that is considered the root of the sorrow of every other sorrow. The tea that we shed over Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in Muharram is a branch of this tea that we shed in this season over Lady Fatimah al-Zahra salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. It's a very important season, and we have to do our best in order to do as much effort as we can in order to fulfill our duty towards this lady, to fulfill our duty to this pillar of religion. That our identity and the completion of our identity cannot be perfected unless we know about her and we learn about her and we mourn her martyrdom and we make her sadness our sadness, we make her tragedy our tragedy, and we live with it every second, every day, with every breath that we take. On this Friday, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who avenge this lady salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha. Inshallah, next Friday, most likely we will be able to do the lectures live from Imam Hassan Center. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten this, to hasten the lifting of the restrictions so we can gather again, so we are not deprived anymore from these gatherings and from attending such places. There is a topic that is mentioned, especially in this country, where a person is more likely to fall into sin or is more subject to certain type of dangers. This topic is when a person is asked, or like a question that comes up, if there is a fetus that is unwanted for any reason, what can we do in order to solve this problem? The scholars, they are very, they concentrate on this topic And it's very important in order to learn about it, because a person can commit a sin, or in a temporary marriage there was a mistake and the woman got pregnant and they want to hide it somehow, which there is nothing wrong about it, but they want to hide it because the general traditions, they do not accept these things. Can the woman lose the child? Can she do something in order to kill the child? Of course not. The Maraja are strict about it. They say you can't. It's haram. It's forbidden. It's forbidden in this case, in order to lose the child, in order to kill the child. And if someone does, they have to pay the diya, the blood money, and they have to pay the penance, the kafara. Two things that they have to pay. Some would ask, I have here some questions that has to be answered. They say that a fetus has a dangerous disease. So the doctors would say it's preferable, in order to lose the child, if he's born, he would be, something is wrong with him. He will be abnormal till the day he died, and he might die straight after birth. So why would the woman go through the pain of birth, like after the baby is completed? Why would they go through it if we can lose it from now? Does the doctor have the right to lose the child, or the mother or the father? And if this happened, who would pay the diya, the blood money? Even in this case, the scholars, they are strict about it. They say even if the baby is not normal and is not going to be normal, even if the baby is going to die straight away after he's born, it's not permissible for the parents or for the doctor or for anyone to kill the baby or to lose it, to do the ijhad. And even the doctor, it's not permissible for him to do it, even if he's got the permission of the parents. And whoever does it, and whoever has a share in doing it, he has to pay the blood money, and they have to pay the penance, which is the kafara. Even if this baby was born from a haram relationship, even if the woman was attacked and she got pregnant by force, she can't lose the child. Even if it was a sin and it was a mistake, she can't lose the child. There are certain accepted cases and situations. Like, there was a question that was asked recently. A man and his wife, they gave birth to a child who has a certain disease, and it's very hard to deal with this child. It's very hard. It causes them a lot of trouble, to a point that they can't stand it anymore. And they are having a second baby. And the doctors told them, because you have this in your gene, it's more likely to happen again with other children. So they asked, can we check, because the baby, they can check for the baby if he's going to have this disease before he was born. He said, if we check for this disease and we find it, can we lose the child or not? Even in this case, the Maraja are very strict, and the rulings for this is very strict. They say, before, if we have to look at the situation, if this situation is going to cause harm to a point that they can't stand it anymore, because they already have a child and they're already struggling with it, and now they're going to have another child, they won't be able to take care of this child. In this case, there is two branches. Either the soul is already in the baby or not. Before the soul comes to the baby, they can do that. If they checked for the disease and there is a disease, and if there is a disease and the baby is born, they won't be able to take care of the child, because it's too hard for the mother and the father, and they can't do anything else, which is going to cause a lot of harms that are going to branch from this. They won't be able to perform their work. They won't be able to look after the other children. And physically, they are unable to do that, because they won't be able to sleep at all. They won't be able to do the house chores, the and their duties towards each other, before the soul reaches the baby, reaches the fetus, and the harm that's going to be done is more than they can bear, in that case they can lose it. They can lose the child. But if the soul reaches the baby, they can't do that anymore. And the soul will become in the baby in the 4th month of pregnancy. But if we notice, now we look at all the rulings when they ask, for example, even if the doctor is Muslim and the baby from parents who are not Muslim, it's not permissible for the doctor to lose the child, to kill the child and take it out. If the parents, they forge a paper, they forge a fatwa, and they give it to the doctor, in that case the doctor, there's nothing wrong if he did it, and he's not going to pay. The parents, those who are the ones who are going to pay. But if we notice in all the cases, whether if the woman got pregnant naturally from a proper marriage, but the baby was sick, and before the soul came into him, reached him, and it was permissible for them to lose the child and they lost it. And in the other cases, whether if it's from haram relationship, whether if it's from a temporary marriage, from any type of marriage, and they lost the child, even when it's permissible to lose the child, there is one common thing. They have to pay the blood money. They have to pay the diya. So when it's permissible to lose the child, they don't have to pay the kafara, but they have to pay the diya. But in the rest of the cases, they have to pay the diya and the kafara. This is very important here. Thinking about this. And the kafara is the kafara of killing someone, which is they have to do 3 things. They have to free a neck, free a slave, and they have to fast 2 months, consecutive 2 months, and they have to feed 60 per person. And if one of these they can't do it, like for example freeing a slave, because we don't have a slave, they repent instead. They do istighfar instead. Imagine if killing a fetus, even if it's permissible, there is a blood money. And if it's not permissible and the parents they accept it, there is blood money and penance. Imagine this thing happened before, where the parents did not accept, where it happened by force. And this one of the smallest tragedies, the smallest crimes that happened to one person in one day. After this person's father passed away, was poisoned. And before this person's father was buried, her child was killed in her womb after she was attacked. And killing her child in her womb was the smallest thing that they did. Was one of the smallest details that the people did, those who called themselves companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Al-Mohsin al-Shaheed. Al-Mohsin, the fetus of Sayyidah Fatimiyah ZAHRA salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. If normal fetuses of normal people, the rulings and the narrations, they say that it's totally not permissible to do that. It's totally not permissible to do that. Even this fetus, after a person loses it, even if it was a stillborn, when it's born, even before the soul reaches this baby, as long as it has a complete shape of a baby, it is a must to wash this baby the same way we wash a dead body. And we do tahneet for it. And we put the kafan on it. Yes, we don't have to pray on it, and it's not even recommended, but it's a must for this fetus to be washed like a normal dead body and to be covered with a kafan. And it's a fetus, a normal fetus, from a normal parents, and it was a stillborn, and or was done in a permissible way. It is respected in Islam. And the narrations and the rulings are strict about it. You have to respect this fetus before it's born and after it comes out. Even if it comes out dead, it has to be respected. And this is in the case of a normal fetus. What about a fetus that was named by the Prophet salawatullahi wasalamu alayhi? The fetus of the Lady of Heaven, SYEDA Fatimah ZAHRA alayhi salam, Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, the best woman Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, the best blessing that was on earth, and the people around her, they didn't know her value. Thinking about that kind of fetus, how come these people did not respect her status and the status of her fetus? They didn't know, they knew. They knew about these rulings that are related to fetuses, because it's a normal situation that happens to everybody. A woman can have a stillborn. A woman can go through things, especially at that time, Asr al-Jahiliyyah, and the people, they still followed the Asr al-Jahiliyyah after the Prophet salawatullahi wasalam alayhi. And during the Prophet's life, where a lot of people, they just believed publicly, just in front of the people, but these crimes kept happening. The woman wasn't respected at that time. Islam came with the message to respect the woman, but people didn't follow that. They considered a woman as a cheap thing to buy and sell. So these things happened more than this time, and they knew the value of this, and they knew the rulings of this. This fetus, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi named him, as the hadith, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, Ali ibn Abi Talib said, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi named Mohsin before he was born. One of these narration, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, when he does the tafsir of the verse, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ. Let me get the translation of this. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنبٍ قُتِلَتْ. And when the girl, of course, buried alive, is asked, Al-Maw'uda is the baby that's buried alive. Okay, but here it's translated into the girl. But it's more general than that. بِأَيِّ ذَنبٍ قُتِلَتْ. For what sin she was killed? Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam speaks about this verse. He says, Al-Maw'uda Wallahi Muhsin. He says, الموؤودة والله محسن لأنه منا لا غير فمن قال غير هذا فكذبوه. الموؤودة is by the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is Al-Muhsin, the son of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, because he's from us. And whoever says other than that, say that he's a liar. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam said as well that the Muhsin is the first baby and the first one who's going to be that his killers are going to be held accountable on the day of judgment. That he said, وَأَوَّلْ مَنْ يُحْكَمُ فِيهِ مُحْسِنُ بْنُ عَلَيْهِ فِي قَاتِلِهِ. His killers are going to be held accountable, the first thing that's going to be happen. Then with Qunfudh, لعنه Allah, the one who hit Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra alayhi salam, when she went out after Amir al-Mu'mineen, and that man told Qunfudh to go back and turn her back home. So he came back and he hit Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra alayhi salam. فَيُؤْتَيَانْ هُوَ وَصَاحِبُهُ. Qunfudh and he's the person who ordered him. They will be brought and they will be hit with a whip of fire. لَوْ وَقَعَ صَوْتٌ مِّنْهَا عَلَى الْبِحَارِ. If one whip falls, if one hit falls on the seas, these seas would boil from the east to the west. And if it was put on the mountains of this dunya, these mountains are going to melt into ashes. This is the status of Al-Muhsin. The status of Al-Muhsin, the son of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra alayhi salam, the fetus that they killed, his status is that high that the first people that are going to be judged on the day of judgment are his killers, according to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. This is mentioned in Bihar al-Anwar, part 53, on page 23. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says from the same reference, he says, أن التي تحمل محسن عليه السلام يوم القيامة السيدتان الجليلتان, the two women of high status that are going to hold al-Muhsin on the day of judgment are Khadija bint Khuwaylid and Fatima al-Zahra, Fatima bint Asad. So the grandmother of the baby and Fatima bint Asad, the paternal grandmother of the baby. So Fatima bint Asad, the mother of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Khadija bint Khuwaylid, the mother of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, are the two women who are going to hold al-Muhsin on the day of judgment. As Imam Sadiq said, and يأتي محسن تحمله خديجة بنت خويلد وفاطمة بنت أسد أمير المؤمنين. These women, they hold him while they are mourning and screaming, and his mother Fatima alayhi salam is saying, هذا يومكم الذي كنتم توعدون. This is the day that you were promised. This is the day where you are going to be held accountable. And one of these narrations that Imam al-Hujjah Ajallahu Ta'ala Farjahu al-Sharif is going to punish the first and the second for what they did to al-Muhsin. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, ثم يأمر بإنزالهما فينزلان إليه. Then he will order that they are going to be brought to him, and he will bring them to life by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he will order the people to gather, and then he will tell them and remind them of what they did. And even hitting Salman al-Farisi and putting fire on the door of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima and al-Hasan al-Hussein, and for why they burnt it, and hitting the hand of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra with the whip, and kicking her stomach, and killing her fetus. All of this the Imam is going to counter for them, and is going to remind them with it, and then he will punish them. And this is mentioned in Bihar al-Anwar, part 53, page 14. So when we mention this about al-Muhsin, we understand the high status of al-Muhsin, because it's a big issue for Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. That's why it has to be a big issue for us, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. And the thing that tells us about how big his tragedy is, that, as was narrated Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, وَقَتْلُ مُحْسِن بِالرَّفْسَ أعظم وأدهى وأمر لأنه أصل يوم العذاب. And killing Muhsin with the kick is harder and a very big tragedy on us. Even it's considered bigger than the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, because it is the source of the day of torture. This is the source of all the tragedies that happened next. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, and to grant us the tawfiq to avenge al-Muhsin al-Shaheed, and to avenge Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كل وليك الحجة بالحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.